Welcome to the History of North America. I'm Mark Vinette. The goings-on in merry old England greatly affected the goings-on in North America, especially its British colonies, land development, trade, commerce, and settlements. During the 1650s, the English Republic was ruled by Parliament, which was dominated by Puritans, who set out to get rid of everything they thought sinful and evil. Adultery meant a death sentence. If a man killed his rival in a duel, he would be charged with murder. Puritans made special targets of swearing, gambling, and drunkenness. They closed public houses on Sundays and fast days. Swearing was punished by fines, the amount depending on who had done the cursing. A duke was fined 30 shillings, a baron 20 shillings, a country squire 10, and everyone else 3 shillings and 4 pence. That was only for the first crime. All fines were doubled the second time around. Puritans were always on the lookout for wickedness and opportunities for same. This was why the playhouses that William Shakespeare had flourished in were closed and referred to as dens of vice and immorality. Traditional pastimes such as bear baiting and cockfighting were stopped. So was lewd and heathen maypole dancing. Dyed clothing of any kind was out. It was against the law to be caught wearing lace, ribbons, or decorative buttons. Puritans frowned on long hair, too. England and its people lived a very different life while Puritans ruled. But the Puritans had made a big mistake when they abolished the monarchy. Monarchy and love of the monarchy were deeply ingrained in English tradition. There was a certain magic about the monarchy. People missed it so much that in 1657, Parliament made an unusual offer. They invited Oliver Cromwell, now Lord Protector, to become king. He laughed off the very idea. Cromwell knew the people did not want any old king. They wanted the real thing, and that meant Prince Charles, who was in exile, son of the beheaded King Charles I. Beyond this, Puritanism had a serious weakness. It depended on Cromwell and Cromwell alone. Once he died in 1658, their regime fell apart. Cromwell's successor as Lord Protector was his son, Richard. Richard Cromwell was not the man his father had been. During the 20 months he was in charge, England sank into anarchy. One of the worst aspects was that many soldiers went unpaid. They began to wander around England, stealing food, money, and anything else they needed. Richard Cromwell knew he was out of his depth, so he bolted in May 1659. While he was gone, there was no one to rule England. It was now imperative that the king return. Charles had waited 11 years to get his throne back. He had made one attempt to seize it by force in 1651, but it failed. When Oliver Cromwell published a poster offering £1,000 for his capture, Charles was forced to hide in an oak tree to escape his pursuers. Today, the many English pubs called Royal Oak are reminders of this incident. After his defeat in 1651, Charles disguised himself. He blackened his face and donned a shabby old suit of clothes. After skipping from town to town with Cromwell's men in hot pursuit, he managed to sail back to France. But 9 years later, Charles's great moment arrived at last. In May 1660, Charles's 30th birthday, he entered London in triumph. Londoners turned out by the thousands to welcome him. This return of the beloved monarchy initiated a period known in English history as the Restoration. A time of relaxed mores, merriment, frivolity, and amusement. But the merry monarch's reign was not all fun. There was a vicious campaign of revenge against the men who had signed his father's death warrant. 10 of these king killers were hung, drawn, and quartered. King Charles had other scores to settle. His main purpose in life was never to go on his travels again, meaning he would not be exiled to Europe as he had once been. He would do anything to keep hold of the throne he had waited for so long. The most important item was to get rid of Parliament. Kings had always relied on Parliament for money. If Parliament did not like a king's policy, they would refuse to pay up. The solution was for Charles to obtain his own store of cash. In 1670, he signed a treaty with King Louis XIV of France. Parliament was supposed to believe that with this treaty, Charles would help Louis with his wars in Europe. But there was a secret clause. Louis agreed to give Charles large sums of money. When Parliament became suspicious, Charles lied, declaring there were no secret clauses, but his hands trembled as he spoke. All the same, Louis's money gave Charles what he wanted. He was able to dissolve Parliament in 1681. He ruled without it for the rest of his life. This killed two birds with one stone. Parliament could no longer blackmail the king by refusing him money, but they would also not stop his heir, his brother James, Duke of York, from succeeding to the throne. Although King Charles led a sensuous life devoted to his own pleasure with many mistresses and illegitimate children, his marriage, ironically, produced no offspring to succeed him. After the Puritan zeal of the Commonwealth period, Charles's private life attracted controversy, but also much popularity. During the 1870s, Charles had managed to raise a small army. Parliament became afraid that he was aiming at absolutism, though that was not his intention at this stage of his reign. As a Protestant, domestic affairs became difficult for him as an anti-Catholic agitation boiled up. His brother James was now known to be a Roman Catholic convert. James then married a Roman Catholic Italian princess as his second wife. Charles's queen was also a Roman Catholic, as well as his principal mistress, and suspicions arose over what Charles had promised the Catholic French by treaty. In the summer of 1678, a popish plot was revealed to the government by perjured informers. Charles insisted that the whole plot was a contrivance, but was unable to keep the general frenzy under control, despite supporting a parliamentary act passed excluding Roman Catholics from sitting in either House of Parliament and holding prominent government positions. When a new parliament met, a bill to exclude the Duke of York from succession to the throne was introduced. Charles, now virtually his own first minister, was determined to prevent its enactment. He and his brother were now genuinely afraid of civil war, but the king kept his head. He came to a secret understanding with the King of France that he would be given support in the event of a rebellion. Charles thus proved himself an extremely shrewd politician as well as a ready liar. Though like his father and grandfather he was rather lazy, he could exert himself effectively at times of crisis. Like his father, he refused to give up control over the armed forces of the kingdom. Unlike him, he saved his leading ministers from execution for treason. Charles had charm and a vast sense of humor, which caused him to be much loved by ordinary people. He was very human and, from the point of view of his dynasty, a successful king. Before he died, in February 1685, he was received into the Roman Catholic Church. But there is good evidence that since before his restoration, he had been a secret Catholic at heart. He was buried in Westminster Abbey. Just as he had always wanted, his brother James became King James II. Even though he had fought hard to make sure James succeeded him, King Charles knew exactly what would happen when he did. He predicted that James would ruin himself within 3 years. His calculation was perfect. James lost no time returning England to the Catholic faith. Protestants seethed as he gave Catholics important government and other official posts. They gritted their teeth in rage as James opened negotiations with the Pope to return the English Church to his jurisdiction. The only comfort James's opponents had lay with his two daughters, Anne and Mary. Both were Protestants. Mary was married to the prominent Dutch Protestant William of Orange. So even if they had to put up with the Catholic James for now, he would be succeeded in time by a Protestant reigning queen, maybe two. Then, in 1688, something happened that changed the whole picture. I'm Mark Vinette, and I hope you're enjoying the ride.